Hello, my name is Jordy Izzard, and I am an Associate Director of Alumni Relations at SAIS, Johns Hopkins University, and I'm here today with Dave Schott from the SAIS class of 1972. And today's date is July 19th, 2013, and we just appreciate that you're here, and we're going to have a little bit of a conversation. So why don't we go ahead and just start with what originally brought you to SAIS?
Okay, well thank you, Jordy, for this opportunity, and Liz and Mike, thanks also for the invitation. I hope it will provide some useful information. Bernard Gordon, a professor of mine in Asian Studies at George Washington University and part-time instructor at SAIS, I believe, at the time, recommended applying to SAIS. By the way, I'm reading this just to try to be a little more concise, but having grown up in Baltimore, I was familiar with the Homewood campus and the quality of education offered by Johns Hopkins University, and I thought JHU SAIS would be a good choice to prepare me for the Foreign Service. In the years prior to applying, I had served for a year and a half in Vietnam and experienced the Tet Offensive and a couple other main battles, which led to the peace talks in Paris. At the time I applied to SAIS, I was an U.S. advisor to the Thai Radar Air Force detachment at a radar site in a national park in Thailand, about 60 miles northeast, air miles northeast of Bangkok. It's a nice assignment to be in a national park, and I enjoyed that fully. I remember driving my Jeep up to the top of the 4,000-foot mountain where the radar site was, and there was an office attached to the operations center that had a typewriter, and so I ended up using the typewriter to type my application. One time, I think in the process I was doing this, I was coming down the hill and I saw this creature bounding in the meadow, sort of slightly removed from where our living quarters were, and I said, "Is that a tiger?" And I looked again, and sure enough, it was a full-fledged grown tiger bounding in the meadow, and I sort of couldn't believe my eyes, but I told the fellows going up to the top of the mountain that I think I saw a tiger in the meadow, and they saw it the next morning too. So that was one of the joys of being in this assignment. At least one of my commanding officers in my JustMag, my military advisory group, helped me get into SAIS by writing a recommendation. I remember at the JustMag dinner they had before I left, they announced transitions in our group, and they mentioned I was going to SAIS. I was very proud of that. Besides having this overseas military experience, being a veteran with the GI Bill also helped facilitate my enrollment into SAIS. So that's pretty much what I wrote for the first question.
That's great. That's great. So tell us, let's segue a little bit into when you were at SAIS from 70 to 72. Tell us a little bit about your experiences here and what you remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have various fond memories of my time at SAIS. I made friendships which have lasted my lifetime with fellow students, Bill Canis, Richard Burns, Larry Hanna, Bennett Ramberg, and Rick Bull, whom I keep in touch with about once every 2 months. I generally hike Old Rag Mountain in Sperryville area with Richard Burns every Christmas, New Year's time, and his son maybe, or daughter, or whoever joins us, you're welcome to come along sometime. Old Rag's a great hike. Since graduating, I've also, this is sort of a side comment, I've enjoyed meeting SAIS students, alumni, and staff at various functions, events, and also I've met some fellow later graduate students at gatherings. I do some work in social justice, economic justice issues. I've met some are like with Friends of the Earth, etc., and so forth. While at SAIS, I contributed to a speaker program. Leslie Gelb spoke about Vietnam for one of our talks. I think he's with Brookings Institution. I wrote an article for the SAIS Review on nuclear weapons and future developments in this area, working with ISEC, which was an international exchange program. I don't know whether it still exists, Association Internationale des Étudiants de Sciences Économiques et Commerciales, sort of an economic exchange group with a French name, which was led by Kathy Schwering and Steve Haas, students in my time here. Interactions with some of my professors. I remember Professor Pearson, economics, was my advisor and was helpful in getting me graduated. He was on my questionnaire team, and helped facilitate that. Frau Stevens helped me navigate my language requirement. Having completed a summer in ISEC with an internship at Hapag-Lloyd Shipping Company in Hamburg between my first and second year, it helped facilitate my ability in that language. I also have memories of Professor Bagley and Fincher, who were in the Asian Studies. They were good advisors. Finally, I remember having a relaxed lunch with Wolf Blitzer, who was stringing for the Jerusalem Times while at SAIS, and while he was a student here. Not sure how much time he has to relax these days, but I have a feeling he can still find the time and the place, knowing how Wolf is. So yeah, that's sort of...
That's terrific. Those are great memories.
Yeah.
Actually, Wolf still comes around here once a year and talks to our newly admitted students, and that's a real treat for everybody.
Well, it's funny, we shared, he had an office space on Wisconsin once when I was doing some sales business, and I had rented for a little space from a real advertising group, and I would see Wolf, and we chat. At the time, the Iranian Special Interest Group was there. This was right around the time of the holding the hostages in the Iranian embassy, and so it was sort of interesting getting in the elevator with some of the folks with this.
We're dealing firsthand with it.
Yeah. But anyway, it was nice to see Wolf at that time.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us a little bit about when you graduated from SAIS in '72, what your career was like and how it evolved and kind of where you are with things now.
Okay. The half year after SAIS, I participated in an honorarium from the University of New Hampshire at the Information Center in Berlin, Informationszentrum, and a public administration program at the Senatur für Inneres, the Senate for Internal Administration, which was an ISEC exchange program, also in Berlin, Germany at the time. And the wall had divided east and west still, so it was fascinating. I lived in a section called Steglitz, which is due south of the Friedrichstrasse, the zoo, Friedrichstrasse station. This is a famous crossing, so sometimes to get to my place of work, I would take the subway underneath parts of East Berlin where the train station was guarded by the Volkspolizei, or the East German police, and walk up to the top for the S-Bahn, the Straßenbahn, the street train, and cross over the wall and see all the fortifications and the watchdogs and the guys with their machine guns, etc. So it felt like a little bit being in a little prison area, although West Berlin, of course, had all the charms of a cosmopolitan city, and that was part of the thing. This is a free center in the communist-dominated area. Anyway, so these experiences in Berlin helped deepen my understanding and appreciation of that country. I returned to the U.S. for the holidays in December 1972, and in '73 I started working with the Labor Department, Bureau of Labor Statistics. Some colleagues from SAIS, the SAIS Mafia, I don't know whether they still use that name, but they helped me, made me aware of this job, international price indices. Later in the '70s, I worked about 2 years in the Commerce Department. I wasn't too enthused with aspects of my work there. There were parts that were interesting, but I did have an idea for a publication. So during my time off, I produced a photographic wall calendar of Washington for the year 1981. The calendar won some printing awards, one printing award, and sold in leading department and bookstores in the area, and led to work as a sales representative for some of the largest car publishers in the U.S. This transition was also inspired in part by the election of Ronald Reagan in 1980. His ideas did not inspire me, and I decided to leave government work and visit some friends in Brazil. Hey, it was carnival time, you know. Get out of Washington, go to Brazil for the carnival. That was my party. My new sales work allowed me some time for some independent activities, which included co-leading a bicycle trip to the Soviet Union in the Perestroika era in 1989, and traveling with my church to Nicaragua from 1992 to '94. In 1994, I joined the staff of Sister Parish Inc., the organization which facilitated my church's link to Nicaragua and relationship building of church parishes in the U.S. with parishes or survivor communities, like there's a women survivors community, indigenous women in Guatemala. And so this organization helped me in this. Eventually I started working with the Sister Parish group. I continue to make trips to this area, that's Central America. And last year, my church, Ascension Lutheran Towson, celebrated the 20th anniversary of its relationship with Fe Esperanza Iglesia Luterana, Faith and Hope Lutheran Church in Managua, Nicaragua. So that's sort of...
wow, you've done a few things in your life.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a possibility of a firm 20-year obligation with the State Department or Treasury Department, or etc. Well, it's this was the course of my life a little different. So
it's great.
Yeah, and I amplify a little bit in the last section, which with the last question.
Yeah, and speaking of the last question, now that we've learned a little bit about, or a lot about your career and some of the things you've done, tell us a little bit in thinking back to current students today, what advice you might have for them.
Okay. Here again, I'm using written text to help facilitate this. In looking back, my advice to current students is that SAIS can open up a number of opportunities, and try as best as you can to take advantage of them. Once you leave SAIS, keep looking for those opportunities and keep working at developing new skills that may open other doors. The SAIS degree can facilitate this process. In my case, my Vietnam and Thai military experience prior to SAIS had a big impact on my career choices. I think it's important for students to always ask themselves about how they can make a better world and be open to changes that may lead in this direction. For me, my sister parish experience was transformative. I'll never forget going to the State Department in the mid-90s with 3 peasants from a cooperative about 7 miles from Managua. While that's a short distance, there still was a noticeable gap between the very humble living conditions of the peasants in the co-op and the slightly better economically challenged conditions of their brothers and sisters in the urban barrios of Managua. In addition to our peasant friends, our group visiting State Department also consisted of members of 2 Lutheran churches, one in Towson, one in Damascus, Maryland, and a pastoral staff member of the Delaware, Maryland ELCA, that's the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, in the Synod. Our purpose to speak to an Assistant Secretary of State for Latin America about the need for low-interest loans so the co-op members could buy seeds and make needed improvements in their living situation on a basic level, that is, to survive, basically. At that time, I thought I had always wanted to be in the State Department working on bridging the gap between the rich and the poor of the world, and here I was, and I felt like I was sitting on the right side of the table. Note, in my visit to Nicaragua last August, I was heartened to learn that thanks to, in part to the generous offering of about $85,000 from the South Dakota Synod of the ELCA, the Lutheran Church of Nicaragua, Faith and Hope, had been provided seed banks and capped and sheltered, that is, wells with a roof on them, in various villages with their parishes, and they also had experimental farms in a couple locations to provide assistance in case of crop losses due to tropical storms and inundation or extended dry spells, elements of climate change which challenge peasant lives in Nicaragua. In closing, I want to say that one's career trajectory can be an ongoing process of learning and change. In addition to my education and work experiences, prayer and working at my faith have helped me navigate the way. As they say in Latin America, vaya con Dios. Good luck, SAIS students.
Thank you so much.